Hello. Hi. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, Onward Endeavors followers. It's Heather here. Just checking all of our live connections. If you pop on here and you can hear me, just go ahead and let me know. Going live in multiple places at one time is always very interesting. I am excited to be on here this morning and talking about the power of curiosity. This is something I've been thinking about for a couple weeks. I've just been having a wild summer traveling and working and meeting a lot of new people. And every new situation I found myself in, I realized it was prompting me to think about how powerful curiosity and having a mindset of curiosity has been in my life, in my clients' lives. And I wanted to give us that discussion. I wanted to kind of give us the opportunity to take a look at how curiosity can be powerful for you and how you can begin to practice having a mindset of curiosity, what that even means or looks like, and some of the results that you can expect to come from having a mindset of curiosity. So if you happen to come on here live and you want to contribute to the conversation, please do so. If you happen to catch a replay somewhere and you want to leave a comment or you want to participate in the discussion, I will definitely follow up because I'm very curious as to how you interpret the information, but also as to how I can help you learn to be more curious in your life. So getting started, what is curiosity? Like, what does that mean to you? When I talk about the power of curiosity, what comes to mind for you when you think about that? What I found when I was actually looking at the definition of curiosity, it's referred to as having a strong desire to know or learn something. And I loved that because it really captures the points I want to make, which is that curiosity, it involves our head and our body, right? It's something that we learn, like we're curious and we want information, but we feel it. And so I loved that the definition included that phrase, strong desire, because it really is the key to accessing the power of curiosity when we allow ourselves to understand that it's a feeling we want to have. It's a mental approach. And a lot of that comes from learning how to ask questions, but it's also a feeling. And so part of the definition as it goes in to describe curiosity is it talks about having a sense of wonder. And when I think about curiosity in that way, I think about when you're a kid, and everything is new, or when you're traveling and everything is new. I just spent a couple weeks in Turkey and Greece for the first time, and I was eating new foods and meeting new people and seeing new things. And it definitely filled me with this sense of wonder. And so I love thinking about curiosity in that way because you can feel it in your whole body and it feels good, right? And that's part of what we're looking at is how do we use curiosity not only to learn new things, but to feel differently. So many of us have a variety of frustrations or anxieties or different feelings that maybe we're looking to shift. And I find curiosity can be so powerful in accessing those feelings. So having that sense of wonder is one of those things. Hello, Sonia. I appreciate you being here. Another aspect of curiosity is epistemic. So that refers more to the intellectual part of curiosity, the part of us that actually is interested in researching or learning. And I love when we put these two things together because your body can get filled with that sense of wonder while your mind is actually open and engaged in learning new things. And you may have heard people talk about how much repetition is required to learn something new. And yet what scientists have realized is that when we are learning in play, it takes less repetition. And so when we can access that feeling of curiosity in our body and we can approach learning with that sense of wonder, it allows us to actually learn much faster, which most of us want to do. And then the other part of curiosity that I want to talk about this morning is how it applies to having empathy for others, right? So when we're looking to connect with others and enhance our relationships, curiosity really allows us to be able to do that in a more powerful way. So let's kind of dig into that. And, please, if you're here and you have comments on what I'm talking about or questions, feel free, put it in there. I'll pause every once in a while and take a look at what everybody has to say. Okay, so let's first talk about some of the problems that come when we're not curious. Some of these are feelings that we might be experiencing, and we might not even be connecting those feelings to thought patterns that we have, right? So the opposite of being curious is being disinterested or having apathy. And a lot of times what's happening in those moments is we're actually coming from a mindset of judgment or assumption. And so when we're assuming things, we've kind of already decided what something is. And when our brains do that, we just narrow our focus. We narrow our ability to see, to ask questions, because we've already made a decision about something, what something is. An assumption is really when we're acting or thinking as if something is true, even though we don't have proof of that. And when we approach a situation or a relationship, or honestly, even our relationship with ourselves and our thoughts that we have about our own goals or our own sense of self, when we approach it from a position of assumption, our brain does not have access to all the possibilities that are actually there. All the options that are available to us disappear once we make an assumption, because our brain just kind of stops working and goes, oh, we know what this is, right? And the problem with that is that when we're trying to grow, when we're trying to understand someone, when we're trying to connect, when we're trying to build a business, when we're trying to enjoy our life and love ourselves, we are looking to learn new things. We're looking to learn new ways of being, and that requires us to have an open perspective. So when we're not being curious, we're making assumptions. We're often making judgments, either about our own abilities or someone else's abilities or someone else's motives. And that actually eliminates the possibility of us learning. So those are some of the problems, but some of the other problems are just that it doesn't feel good, right? When we get triggered, which is a word everybody seems to use these days, when we have disagreements or our feelings get hurt, when we're thinking that we're right about something, right? When we're procrastinating, hesitating, maybe we have ideas and we just aren't taking action on them. What we find is that in all of those feelings, if we start pulling them apart, what we find is a lot of assumptions. We find thought patterns that are assuming things, and that never feels good. So the wonderful thing about curiosity is that it allows us to ask ourselves, what assumptions am I making? What judgments am I making? How can I observe this situation differently? Right? I had a moment when I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago where I had met someone new, and I'm just chatting with her, trying to get to know her, and all of a sudden I could feel my body kind of resisting this conversation, right? I don't know if you've had that happen to you. It was catching me off guard because it doesn't happen a lot for me lately. So, I'm trying to stay in the moment, trying to stay present and curious about her. And my body was just kind of like, right? Like it just didn't want to be in this conversation anymore. And curiosity and the practice that I have of being curious, it allowed me to really connect with myself and to connect with her in a different way, because I was able to ask myself, how do I hear these words differently? And I really want you to think about that question for a moment, because it applies to whether you're talking to yourself or, like in the situation I'm referencing, where I'm meeting a new person. I could feel that I was immediately interpreting her words from a fixed standpoint. And that's not who I want to be, right? It's not a powerful place at all. So by being able to ask myself, how do I hear these words differently? By being curious about what another perspective would be, even thinking to myself, well, how would someone else interpret these words? It allows me to learn more about myself, to learn more about her. And what's the value of that? Any thoughts before I continue on the value of being able to understand what someone else's perspective might be? The value of being able to even find other perspectives within yourself. This is where we begin to really access the power of being curious, because curiosity allows us to have more information. And it's not about information being right or wrong. It's about being able to see other possibilities, right? Whether it be within ourselves, where we begin to see our thoughts and our feelings, and we become more aware of how we interpret information, or we become, again, better able to connect with other people, because rather than assuming their intent, rather than assuming their motives, or assuming what they believe, we're able to be curious about it. We're able to say, hey, who are you genuinely? Especially when we disagree with someone, which, to be honest, is what was happening to me in that conversation. My body felt resistance because I was disagreeing very strongly. And that's, not uncommon. So by being able to be curious in that conversation, and in general with anyone, what we're able to do is we're able to allow the opportunity for expansion and connection. When we can genuinely and curiously say, hey, I'm very interested as to how you came to that opinion or that belief. This is how I feel. And we can have a dialogue about it from that place of curiosity, which, again, as a reminder, is that strong desire, but it's that sense of wonder combined with the intellectual awareness that we want to learn. It's not coming from a place of assuming that we're right and they're wrong. And it's also not coming from a place where we're assuming they're right and we're wrong. It's that place in the middle that's really wanting more information, that truly holds a lot of power. Even when we talk about goals. So, at Onward Endeavors, I work with individuals and small business owners, and a lot of it is on goal achievement. How do people want to know, how do I change my life? How do I feel differently? How do I build a business, right? So more tangible goals that we're looking towards. And yet what I find is that curiosity as a mindset allows you to do that. It allows you to be more consistent because you're not coming from a place of judgment. You're not assuming things are going to go wrong. You're not assuming things are going to go perfectly. You're entering things from a standpoint of, I wonder what's going to happen, right? And what that does is it allows you to experiment, and it allows you to learn, and it allows you to play at the same time, which overall just makes the entire process more fun and more enjoyable, right? It shifts the entire vibe of your experience when you can be curious. And Samuel, yes, hello, nice to have you here too. It does open you up to new opportunities that you may have otherwise resisted. Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to give a couple other examples, because sometimes I know that people have shared some feedback with me. Maybe they have a perception of my life as being easy at this point, which I think can be a common perception when we look at other people that are maybe doing things that we want to be doing, right? Or that have things that we want to have. And sometimes the perception, even in this topic, might be, well, how can I be curious when all of these things are happening to me, or when I'm triggered in a moment? Like, how do I actually get to a point of feeling curious when these things are happening? And so I wanted to share some more personal examples, and hopefully this kind of helps, give you some other things to think about. So I know we all had different experiences in 2020, right? It was just a wild year for all of us, regardless of where we fall. And for me, I started Onward Endeavors in 2019. So, as a newly formed business, I didn't have a lot of traction in my business yet. And I wasn't really worried about that because I had already done so much work in regards to entrepreneurship that I didn't really have concerns initially when 2020 first started happening. But as time went on in my life with Irie, being alone with my special needs daughter, where there was no school, no aid support, 24/7 being a caretaker, not getting a lot of sleep, it began to be a very uncomfortable situation. And what I realized, what I felt happening was that my natural and practiced curiosity and joy and excitement and belief patterns started shifting. And I started feeling anxious and frustrated and impatient. My mind started thinking about things from the standpoint of, how on earth am I going to do this, right? Worrying, well, where or how am I going to take care of her and continue to grow a new business, right? So all of these thoughts, and maybe that's how you think right now, or maybe you're kind of in that in-between area where sometimes you're curious and sometimes you're anxious or assumptive. That's where what I was experiencing at that time. And thankfully, I was able to recognize what was happening inside of me. And I was able to have some self-talk that really sounded something like, all right, Heather, let's get back to basics, right? Let's focus on what you know. And one of the very first things I did was started focusing on the power of curiosity. So rather than thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, right? I'm not going to be able to work and take care of Irie. I can't go outside. I can't get any work done, right? We begin to see how that feels in the body when your thoughts escalate in that manner. Instead, by focusing and being able to refocus myself on being curious, I began to ask myself questions like, how am I going to do this, right? How am I going to continue to build my business? How am I going to help more people? Where are my next clients going to come from? What can I do? And it completely shifted not only the way that my brain started responding, but most importantly for me in those moments was it began to shift how I was feeling. And it allowed me to find the areas in which I could do things differently, even under those circumstances. And the same is true, to be honest with you, when I was even building or starting Onward Endeavors. For those of you that are in the midst of maybe transitioning careers or thinking about starting your own business, curiosity is extremely powerful for the same reason. I was coming out of a decade-long career in the cellular industry, and it was challenging to make the transition. And yet what curiosity did for me was it allowed me to start looking at things in new ways. When I was sharing with some people in my life before I decided to leave, just some questions that I had or some uncertainty I had about that career, a lot of the perspective that was brought to me was like, well, this is how life is. This is what we have to do. If you want to make money, you're going to have to work 24/7, right? It was a lot of this. And curiosity allowed me to ask, is that true? Is this how I have to live if I want to take care of my family? Right? Curiosity allowed me to kind of lean into and to imagine a different life for myself. And it can do the same thing for you. You can start asking yourself, well, what would my days look like if I could design them, right? That's very curious and it's very powerful. Well, what if I was in charge of these particular things, right? What would I do? What would it look like? How would I feel? These are all very curious questions that allow you to start expanding your vision and seeing new possibilities. One other example I'll share with you is that over the course of my career, I've been responsible multiple times for leading sales teams. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people don't like salespeople is because they're very assumptive, right? There's a lot of judgment that goes on and there's a lot of assumptions. And let's face it, no one likes to be on the receiving end of that either. So specifically in sales, what I would commonly find in underperforming sales teams is that they would be approaching people from a very assumptive place, right? And they were really focused on what they were trying to get done, and they would assume what was best for the person that they were trying to sell to. And every single time that I would shift their focus to one of curiosity, what would happen is the sales conversations would become more about getting to know that person, right? And so the entire vibe of the conversation would shift, the results of the conversation would shift, and it would really move into one of connection and power. So regardless of what industry you're in, where you're at in your own growth, or even if you're just kind of beginning this journey of trying to get to know yourself better, being curious allows you to see information and to see possibilities and to understand and to have empathy. There's really no situation where curiosity isn't going to help you. Now, as I kind of wrap this up, what I want to share is that curiosity does require one particular thing. There's really a key to having curiosity work for you. So if you're going to start practicing it, if you're going to start leaning into that strong desire to learn, what you want to keep in mind is that underneath a mindset of curiosity, at the very core of it, the only way that it works is when there is a belief that there's something you aren't seeing. Okay? So when you start asking yourself questions, or you start communicating with other people from a point of curiosity, remember that feeling and that sense of wonder and the questions come from a belief that there is something for you to learn. There's something that you don't know. And that belief has to be there. If you just start asking yourself or other people questions and you think you're being curious, but in your heart, you really believe that you're right, you really believe that you're the expert, that there's nothing more for you to learn, that's not curiosity. That, honestly, that becomes more like manipulation. And that's a vibe that's not going to help you. It's not going to feel good. There's no power in that. So remember, curiosity underneath really requires that belief that there's something you aren't seeing. And when you can grasp that, when you can move into that, it's going to feel better. Now, if this conversation about curiosity has made you curious more about me, about Onward Endeavors, or about working with me, I want to let everybody know that I announced something very, very exciting to my email list this morning and on social media over the weekend. I have actually opened up 8 spots for people to work with me in a completely new way. You get to pay what you want. Now, this is a one-time offer. It's only for the first 8 people. It's a first come basis, and it's to my email list. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I've actually had an amazing year. I've had an amazing summer. And last weekend, Irie and I were walking around the park, and I was thinking very curiously, how amazing it was that all of these things have been coming to us, right? Tons of blessings, tons of opportunities, tons of gifts. And I was thinking to myself, how can I share this? How can I spread this? I don't want to keep all of this goodness to myself, right? I really, really try to just love on people as much as I can. And what came to me is that I know that there are some of you that have been watching me for a while, that maybe you're kind of curious about what working with me would be like, and yet there's a lot of assumptions in your mind. Will it be too much money? Will I have the time? Will it work? And I thought, you know what? Let me be curious and give you the opportunity to remove all of those obstacles. So between now, Thursday and Saturday, 8 spots, actually 7. I had one fill up from the email this morning already. So there's going to be a link in the comments. If you're not on my email list, you can just pop in there, jump on the email list. All the details will be going out again later today. This is a very unique opportunity to be able to go through my ideal system to success. This is for individuals, and you get to pay what you want. All right, I appreciate all of you. I love all of you. I'm encouraging all of you. And if you have comments on curiosity or anything else, just leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. Have a great day.